All right. Hello, folks. I am back. That's right. I am back. Today, we're going to be talking about...
Wait, you were gone?
Everyone knows that I was gone. If you listen to last episode, you know I was gone and you were missing me. But we're going to be talking about last week's episode and Joe Biden's hard shift to the socialism left. On this episode of the In the Tank podcast, episode 243. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. Joining me today, I have Justin Haskins, editorial director here at the Heartland Institute. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Donald. Very, very well. Still COVID-free.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Also COVID-free, we have Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad I'm not the host today since I apparently did a disastrous job last week. And I'm actually just hoping that Andy is able to do production values better than Joe Biden. But since Andy is not a monkey, I'm sure he can pull it off.
I don't understand the reference, but also joining us, we have Isaac Orr, policy fellow at the Center of the American Experiment. How are you, sir?
I am doing just dandy, Donald.
How excited are you that I am back in the hosting chair, Isaac?
Oh, man, am I excited. This is like Christmas for me. Last week was just mommy and daddy yelling at each other, and I'm just sitting there like holding my teddy bear, hoping it would all just end.
You're trying to eat your mashed potatoes at the dinner table.
Oh, my God, and I just couldn't.
So I want to spend the first 10 or so minutes just going over what I thought of last episode. So basically last episode, I was not here. Some family matters I had to be there for.
Classic TV show.
So Jim took over the hosting duties. And basically the entire episode, this is episode 242, just descended into one long argument from start to finish with nobody moderating the entire thing. So I listened to it twice. I listened to it the day of, and I listened to it this morning, and I took notes. Man. So I want you all to follow me along with this journey of me kind of dissecting some of this.
Oh boy!
So I would encourage those that are listening to this episode that didn't listen to the last one to check out last episode. It was a pretty fun discussion.
It was awesome.
However, my takeaway, my review, is that I found it to be incredibly frustrating because you guys were simultaneously... Well, I'll wait. Okay, I'll wait on that one. Let's start off with clip number 1. This is the very beginning of the podcast. Andy, just go ahead and play the very beginning. This is how it goes when I'm not here.
This feels like a Festivus episode or something. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Jerry Stiller, rest in peace.
And welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I messed it up already.
Stop it right there. In the Talk podcast?
Hey,
Jim,
man.
This is why I leave the podcast in your hands and you mess up the third word of the intro.
It took me 2 seconds to screw it up. So yeah, welcome back, Donnie. Please save us.
All right. So anyways, enough of that. So basically you guys, I realized after going through it the second time that you guys had 2 different arguments going on simultaneously.
Okay? That's how good we are.
That's how good we are. Yes. And if I were there, I would have helped to guide and make sure that you guys stayed on one topic before moving on to another one. So first off, Justin, I think you were assuming that I'm going to be taking your side the whole time during this, but I'm not. You start off talking about basically the conversation all descended from a story of a hairstylist salon where the hair salon owner reopened despite the lockdown restrictions that were in place in Texas. Okay. Now, they tossed this over to you because Jim thought that you were going to slam these restrictions and talk about how ridiculous they were, to which you didn't. You basically started saying that you should follow the proper channels when dealing with the law that you don't like.
Don't make assumptions, Jim.
You shouldn't just disobey laws. It's the left that does this. They're the ones that shut down cities and destroy personal property. If people just don't obey laws they think are stupid, we'll have anarchy, which is also how I described last week's podcast. It was anarchy. So far, Donald, I like what I'm hearing. let's
Very
start off
persuasive.
with this part of the podcast, which I am in total disagreement with pretty much all of Justin's comments during that segment. First, there is a difference between civil disobedience, protesting, and infringing on other people's rights, i.e., destroying someone's property or limiting their, right to movement, or like blocking roads. Okay. 2, disobeying laws that you think are stupid is protesting. However, you do have to expect legal repercussions. Okay. So I think that this is where we were really kind of getting off the rails. Firstly, these legal repercussions are part of the protest. Okay. So this lady with the hair salon, if no legal repercussions were to be a part of this protest, then nobody would even know who she is. It's because of those legal ramifications that caused the story to go viral and caused people like you and I to talk about it on a podcast like this. So that's just part of the protest. Okay. So yes, I think that you should disobey laws that you think are stupid. So that was debate number 1. So then you guys just kind of slid into a completely different argument with absolutely no transition. Okay. You start talking about whether or not a law is good and or justified. This one I blame Jim on. You're the one that kept lurching the conversation back into this. But to that first point about the idea of disobeying laws is just civil disobedience. Later on, Isaac gets Justin to admit that he's wrong with a ridiculous hypothetical about living in communist China.
This is my hypothetical.
So Andy, this is the 28-minute, 45-second clip. If you want to play that one, you guys all sit here and take your beatings.
What specifically are you referring to? Like, I wouldn't be allowed to pray? I mean, what do you? I mean,
Right.
You have to be more specific.
Let's just say this is communist China. You're not allowed to have a Bible. You're not allowed to meet. You're not allowed to do any of that stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
I think it would be time for a revolution.
Boom. Okay, stop it right there.
That's what I think.
Stop it right there. Boom. That is it right there. Justin says, I think it would be time for a revolution. That is what the hair salon person is doing. It's civil. It's civil disobedience. It's a little micro revolution right there.
It's quiet riot, Justin.
It's quiet riot. So then this
true.
is when Jim slides the conversation to a completely different argument. This is argument number 2 that's going on simultaneously during all of this.
High-level stuff, Donnie. High-level stuff.
So, Andy, please go to the 22-minute, 25-second mark. This is Jim shouting. Part 1.
Yikes.
Much
shrugged. Yes, you did. God, you were the worst.
Look.
Individual.
How do you under your Isaac under your way of looking at the world, you have anarchy. Everybody
no.
Absolutely, because everyone will just say this law is a racist law or this law is a bigoted law.
It's not a law. That is the big difference here, Justin.
Yes,
you are
it
not
is.
acknowledging it. It is not a law. It's an order from the governor.
That's a law.
In a state of emergency that is open-ended and will never end. There has been an enormous power grab and has been completely out of proportion to what is necessary to keep us safe and to keep us from getting sick. We're not going to be able to stop from.
All right, so Jim starts off shouting, it's not a law, which is a definitive statement. Okay?
That's right.
Definitive statement of fact that he's trying to say there. But then he follows up by saying that it's a power grab that is out of proportion to what is necessary.
Both statements are true.
Judgment.
It's not true. It is a law. This is absurd to say it's not a law.
I'm just surprised Jim didn't have a stroke during that segment.
So then Jim goes on to read a statement from an article from the Federalist that outlines the authoritarian restrictions that we're experiencing with a passage ending, stating that these actions are without precedent. Not that they're unlawful, that they're without precedent. So this is the 2 different arguments. Whether or not you should civilly disobey a law that you think is unjustified, which, Justin was saying no, and I think Jim and Isaac were saying yes. And then whether or not these laws, these restrictions are constitutional in the first place, to which Justin was saying, yes, they are. And Jim was saying, no, they aren't. So these are 2 different things going on. So I looked up, whether or not these lockdown orders are constitutional. I found a Cato Institute article, which basically boils down to saying that this is a question that will be decided by judges. And so far, and for the most part, And historical precedence holds that in periods of national emergency and pandemics, these actions are allowed. So, Jim, it seems like you are wrong on this. And after Jim's outburst, Isaac states that he feels like he's torn in the middle, which was my first clue that I think Isaac was right about all of this. I think he was on the right end of both arguments, which I knew was going to blow your guys' minds.
It's not. That's totally false. But go on.
So I'm almost done with this. All right. So it says Isaac invokes the word civil disobedience, to which Justin throws in a hypothetical back at him, saying if people think that taxation is theft, should they just stop paying taxes? If so, that's the end of society. To which, I'll respond to that in a little bit, but I think that is a fair thing. But Isaac didn't give a great answer to that. Which is my only criticism of Isaac during this whole thing. Jim then jerks the discussion back into whether or not these laws are constitutional. After Justin responds to this, saying that it is lawful, but it's a bad law, Isaac says, I hate that I agree with Justin on this. So again, Isaac's on the right side of that argument too. Finally, Jim concedes the debate. He concedes that argument. Okay, so that one's over. We can toss that out. Back to the civil disobedience. Isaac remarks that Texas opened their salons after the story of the jailed salon owner went viral. So he just tossed that in there. I don't think you made a big enough deal about that. That means the protest won. That's basically what that's as much as you could hope for with a civil disobedience thing. Is that the law that you are going against, that you are protesting, gets overturned.
Yep.
That's what happened.
And the governor pardoned her or whatever. So lots of stuff happened. That was basically the Boston Tea Party. And you would think somebody who's wearing a Red Sox hat would be able to appreciate that.
So
that wasn't the Boston Tea Party.
So then Justin goes back to his hypothetical. He says, should libertarians stop paying taxes? If they thought, so then I would answer, if they thought that it could lead to a critical mass that would end with taxation being abolished, then absolutely they should. Go for it. Absolutely they should. And then the cherry on the top, this is my absolutely favorite part. This is the 37-minute mark, 30 seconds. Play that one. This is the best part right here.
To the people who are supposedly the public servants. I agree with that. But if we're going to say that this is somehow, anyone can just violate any law they want if they think that it's unjustified, then I think that that's absurd.
It's absurd that you think that's what the point that Isaac and I are making, that you should defy any law you don't like. No.
This is the point that I'm making.
Stop it right there.
This is a specific.
Stop it right there. So exactly Jim says, it's ridiculous that you think Isaac and I are making the argument that we should just disobey any laws that we think are unjustified. And then in the background, you hear Justin saying that is Isaac. You hear Isaac saying that is the point that I'm making. Which is just perfect.
All right.
It. So Isaac is right on the debate about civil disobedience and breaking laws that you think are unjustified. Okay. Now, to a little asterisk on that, to Justin's, whatever, that you have to expect legal ramifications. I just would argue that's part of the protest. And then, as far as I could tell, and I'm no constitutional scholar or anything like that, in the argument of Jim versus Justin about whether or not these laws that are happening in states are constitutional, it seems like Justin is right on that one. Dropping the mic, let you guys talk, hear your response, and then we'll move on.
Well, what we discovered is that Justin is very comfortable just submitting to whatever whims any governor may have for him, and he will comply and he will just obey, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court just this week basically said that the lockdown of Wisconsin is not constitutional, that you can't criminalize opening your business or going outside or getting your hair cut. So I'm right on that. That this is not
which Constitution, Jim?
The state constitution of Wisconsin.
That's right.
And
that's my point. When you say not
that,
constitutional, you're talking about the federal constitution. You're not talking about the state constitution of Wisconsin. I said during the debate, during that conversation that these things may be in violation of state constitutions and state laws. I fully acknowledge that. But that's not what you're arguing when you say it's not constitutional. You're saying it's against some federal constitutional amendment. And in fact, I know that's what you meant because Isaac then guessed which federal constitutional amendment that would be, and you agreed with it.
Isaac, I want you to take a victory lap on the fact that you were right on all of these on all of these arguments.
I would like to take this moment to address the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, because that was more of a process thing. That wasn't a blanket, this is unconstitutional. This is the way that it was implemented was wrong. So therefore, it was an order and not a rule. I don't know what the difference is between those, but apparently it's substantial enough that it repealed all of the stay-at-home orders. But that has led to a big dose of freedom going into America's dairyland. And I think that people from Illinois need to respect the fact that Wisconsin has freedom and that Illinois does not, and they need to stay home. As a native Wisconsinite, we do not want, and I speak for the entire people of Wisconsin here, we don't want fibs coming up north and spreading their Rona. I mean, honestly, like if there was a chance for Wisconsin to say we're going to build a wall and Illinois is going to pay for it, sign me up. Sign me up, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, I just want to say, if you're planning on going to Wisconsin to get a little taste of freedom, don't do it. You live in Illinois, take your medicine. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I don't have any problem with Isaac's Illinois wall suggestion. Illinois is terrible in many respects, and so a wall makes perfect sense to me. I
don't know if a wall's enough, frankly.
Yeah, I don't know if that is either. I have a question for Donnie.
Yeah.
So, Donnie, if you're saying that civil disobedience is permissible, first of all, what do you mean? You don't mean legally permissible, you mean morally permissible.
Yeah,
right?
Of
course. So you acknowledge it's illegal.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
100%. You have to accept legal ramifications. That's part of the protest.
Okay. So you're saying it's morally permissible. My question is, morally permissible always, or only morally permissible under certain circumstances?
I would have to do that on a case-by-case basis. I don't like.
So you're saying morally permissible under certain circumstances, not always.
Yeah.
If I say that it's unconstitutional, if I say that I don't want a school, so I'm not going to pay any taxes that go to the local school because I hate schools, am I allowed to do that or not?
Sure, morally, I don't care what you do. But yeah, if there's legal ramifications, you have to expect that.
No, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, is it moral to do it?
Sure.
So morally, any kind of civil disobedience is permissible.
I think you can make the
under
argument.
Any circumstance.
Sure.
So then how do you not have anarchy if everybody lives by that code?
I would add the caveat, unless you're violating somebody else's property rights.
Absolutely.
That's the caveat, right?
That doesn't matter, because under this particular circumstance that we're talking about here, the argument would be, of course, that you go out into society and you spread coronavirus to other people and you harm other people. So that argument is blown out of the water anyway. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if the standard is you can have civil disobedience whenever you feel like it because you personally think that it's warranted in this particular instance, then how do you not have anarchy?
Because the laws are still in place and they're still being enforced. If the policemen stop enforcing those laws, then that would be a whole nother thing.
But okay. And
that would probably be a larger testament to those laws are unjustified nature.
Okay, so then by that, so what you're saying then is people should be punished. Not just that they can be punished, but they should be punished.
Well, I think again that's a case-by-case basis for sure. I mean, if there's laws on the books that are like you can't wear a fake mustache into a church in Alabama or something like that. You know, if somebody does that just to point out how ridiculous that law is. Like, do I think that person should be punished? No, I don't, personally.
So sometimes you think they should be punished and sometimes they should not be punished? Is that right?
Again, it's like society is making this decision.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at here, and this is really the point that I still have not heard anyone actually explain the answer to this question. How do you decide whether or not you're going to force people to follow the law or not? How do you make that decision?
I think, okay, when there was certain people that weren't allowed to sit at the front counters at restaurants or whatever, Okay. Was that right that they broke that law and sat there anyways?
I never.
Think yes.
Sure.
I think they absolutely were in the morally high ground by breaking that ridiculous law.
Okay. But that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, how do you decide when you're going to enforce the law or not enforce the law?
So you're basically asking me to be the judge.
I'm asking you to, well, the judge is, I mean, sort of, I guess. I mean, the judge is supposed to enforce the law always. The judge is not supposed to decide randomly not to enforce the law. They're supposed to always enforce the law. So what I still don't understand. I still don't understand how you can say that we're going to have a society where sometimes we're going to let people break the law and sometimes we're not. And how do we know when? We don't know. We just decide arbitrarily that that's going to be the case. I guess if enough people agree that we're going to allow it, then that's permissible.
That's
well,
it.
Then
that's
if,
the standard.
If that's it, then all laws
that's
are.
Basically it.
No,
that's
well,
it.
If
that's all anything ever is.
That's basically it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's called a revolution, which was
Justin,
my point. You no longer have a valid society or government at that point. It's gone. If everyone just decides we're not going to follow the laws, then they're
civil
gone.
Disobedience. You're arguing against civil disobedience.
I'm not arguing against it. What I'm saying is the law always has to be enforced.
Sure, fine. In most cases, with the
not
exception
sometimes,
of
always.
the fake mustache in churches law. Like other than that,
we got feedback from our listeners to last week's podcast. Not a single person was in support of your positions, Justin.
So what? That's a great argument. That's the 97% argument, right, Jim?
That's not.
So if most people agree with
Justin, shut up for a second. Justin, shut up for a second.
97% of people disagree.
Mark
with
this
Jim
time
lately.
frame,
Justin. That is not an argument. I'm pointing it out for the benefit of our listeners and for Donnie, who may not have known that, we've gotten feedback from this and everyone's like, what are you talking about, Justin? I thought this was a podcast that talked about freedom and liberty and advancing all that stuff. Instead, you're the stickler. You're the Karen of this podcast. You're scolding people. Hey, be sure you got to follow the law. The point here is that
K word.
The point here, Karen, was that these governors have instituted by decree, with the force of law, illegitimate seizing of people's property and freedom.
You're sliding it back into the
debate.
second
That is the principle at play here. And if people, I'm telling you, in Illinois, there's going to be civil disobedience. The Governor Pritzker just said, somebody asked, well, why don't you open up Lake County, which doesn't have nearly the kind of infection rate for COVID-19 as Cook County? Because I can't do that, because then people will leave Cook County and go into Lake County. We can't have that. So I got to keep everybody locked down for the good of the public. This is not medically justified, and this is not an American policy. This is a tyrannical policy.
I'll put a bow on this. Okay. So to Justin's question, yes, enforce all of the laws so that could expose it to a number of people, so that we could change that ridiculous law. So when there's a guy that's paddle boating out in the ocean or whatever in California, and he gets arrested because that's technically against the law, we would never have known about that ridiculous law if it wasn't enforced. So now that it's enforced, now we could actually have it out in public and we can change it. Boom. Great. Justin, let's move on. Let's move on. But yes, I do think you should have civil disobedience. That is a core tenet of a free society.
So hold on, just one.
So, anyways,
hold on, hold on. One.
Joe Biden has
one last thing.
Today.
One last thing. How then can any of you argue at all when the left goes crazy and shuts down highways?
Because they're infringing on people's personal liberties. Not
any more than when the coronavirus protesters park in the middle of the street and shut down the road. Not any more than when a person goes out into public with coronavirus and infects someone else with it.
Well, obviously, I'm not advocating that.
What's the difference?
You're that is the big difference.
How is there a big difference?
The blocking traffic, again. I don't know.
Nobody gets to block traffic. I don't care what side of the aisle.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that. I mean, if they're making some type of protest ring around the Capitol or something, I don't know. Maybe you can convince me that that's fine. Coughing on people because you have coronavirus and you want a haircut? No, sure, I'm against that too. But yeah, no, civil disobedience is still a core tenet of American society, sir. Joe Biden. Joe Biden.
Justin, wait, Donnie, I want to say one mean thing to Justin before we do this. So, Justin, what would you have done before Loving versus Virginia? Huh? Huh, buddy?
Oh, give us some context. I don't know what that is.
That's the Supreme Court decision that outlawed interracial marriage. So, like, would you have just followed that?
It was
Or
the
would you have
Supreme Court.
ignored the law.
It was the Supreme Court decision overturned bans on interracial marriage.
But that's
in
not
Virginia.
what we're talking about. What we're talking about is whether the law should be enforced. How do you change laws? By the logic that's been presented here,
enforce them.
you don't change. You're the only one. They're not saying that. Jim is saying don't enforce the law. That's what Jim is saying. Jim is saying don't enforce the law. It's wrong to enforce the law. That's what Jim is saying.
It is, yes. No, I'm saying that an arbitrary decision by a governor, like
it's not arbitrary.
It is absolutely. Oh my God, it's not arbitrary. Are you kidding me?
Okay, we gotta stop this. I'm sorry I did this. Come on,
Donnie, you talked about the paddle boater. It's like when governors are deciding. In fact, right now in California, the beaches are open and you're allowed to run and walk, but you can't bike and you can't sunbathe. You can't stay in place anywhere on the beaches. You must keep moving. But you can also surf and you can bodyboard and all that stuff. Those are completely arbitrary decisions that have no basis in science or fact. It's just the whim of the governor. These are not legal. These would not be able to stand up in a court challenge. The trouble is all of our freedoms are taken away before I'm not going to wait 3 months for my business to reopen while I wait for the courts to handle it. Are you crazy? I'm going to open it. That's called civil disobedience, and it's morally and I think legally justified and right.
And every leftist in the world would say that exact same thing about almost all kinds of laws.
So Joe Biden
they were passed by white people. And by that logic, I guess they can do that.
You're right, Joe. You're right, Justin. You're right,
So
Justin.
then we don't have a society. You can just ignore the law and say, well, it's a racist law. I don't have to follow it. I guess that's
legal repercussions. That's part of
not in Jim's universe. There's not in Jim's universe.
I didn't say nobody should be. I didn't say that people shouldn't be arrested.
So Joe Biden has made news recently because he is the presumptive Democratic candidate, and Bernie Sanders dropped out. To which we all took a victory lap with our Stopping Socialism project. We talked about socialism specific things on our YouTube channel, Stopping Socialism TV. You can also find us on Facebook. Just look up Stopping Socialism. But we took a little victory lap because Bernie Sanders dropped out. But it seems like he is crawling back from the grave. He's turned himself into a White Walker, and he is infecting Joe Biden's campaign. Justin, what am I talking about?
Well, very recently, I think at this point, Joe Biden is desperate. He has no support from the left at all. He knows that. He knows he's in huge trouble. So what he's done is he's reached out to Bernie Sanders in an attempt to try to win back some of those leftists who are very unhappy that he was the nominee, and agreed to give them a very important seat at the table. And he's done this by creating, I think it's 6 different committees, task forces is what he's calling them, to help shape his presidential platform, his own presidential platform. So he's actually advocating here for changing his own platform, agreeing to do that. And he's going to do this by bringing together people that Bernie Sanders has chosen in these 6 different areas, as well as his own people who he thinks, I guess, agree more with him. And they're going to get together and form these committees that are basically going to reshape, at least this is what it seems like, they're going to reshape his entire presidential platform. And what's made this so interesting is that the whole reason why Democrats voted in Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders when those were the only 2 left in the race is because they wanted the more moderate candidate, supposedly, for whatever reason. I think it's because they thought he was more electable. And so they picked Joe Biden because they thought he was more electable because he's supposedly more moderate. And then Joe Biden, because he feels like he's going to lose without support from the far left, has reached out and said, you know what, I'm going to become less moderate and I'm going to completely change my platform. And I'm going to allow all of you nut jobs to come in and help me change my platform. And he allowed Bernie Sanders to handpick all of these people. Right. Who's on this committee on that side of it. So half the committee members in all these different committees, about half, are all chosen by Bernie Sanders. So you've got on the climate change committee, to give you a sense of who these people are, on the climate change committee, you have co-chairing it is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the face of the Green New Deal.
Uh-huh.
You have Varshini Prakash, the co-founder of the Sunrise Movement, which is a socialist organization that helped create the Green New Deal. These are the same.
And welcome to the In the Tank podcast episode.
Yeah, that's also there's chaos in the control room. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Varshini Prakash, co-founder of the Sunrise Movement. The Sunrise Movement, these are the same people that sat in on Nancy Pelosi's office about a year and a half ago or so and refused to leave because she wasn't agreeing to the Green New Deal. She's on the Climate Change Committee. You've got this guy named Derek Hamilton, who's a professor at Ohio State University, a real radical who believes that we need to have a federal jobs guarantee and helped Bernie Sanders create his federal jobs guarantee program. And the list goes on and on and on. My favorite is, of course, the face of modern monetary theory, Stephanie Kelton. She's on the economics committee. Okay. So all of these radical, extreme Bernie Sanders people, many of whom are socialists or socialist leaners, are now recreating, along with a bunch of establishment Democrats from the Obama administration and elsewhere, recreating Joe Biden's platform just several months before the election. And not only that, but they're going to supposedly be on the transition team if Joe Biden wins the election. And they're going to help him choose who the cabinet members are going to be going into the next administration if he actually wins. So this is incredible. I mean, the whole reason why we didn't want Bernie Sanders from a moderate Democrat's perspective is because he's too radical. And the first thing Joe Biden does is bring in more of Bernie Sanders radicals to help reshape his platform because he knows he can't win without the radicals.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It seems like he's trying to placate the one side that was super angry that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination. So Biden is seemingly just adopting all of Bernie Sanders' platforms. And now I think part of this, again, is to get party unity. And I think the larger part of it is just Biden forgot all of what his original platforms were.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jim, what does this mean? Like these task force for transition teams or whatever, is that going to carry weight if and when he becomes president? Or is this just kind of like a campaign stunt? Muted.
Absolutely, it's going to carry weight if Biden becomes president. Hope not, but if he becomes president, look, I know some of the people that were on the transition team for Donald Trump that did his transition. They were on his transition team for the EPA, for instance. And a lot of what he did came through the transition team. It helped set the agenda for the Trump administration. The same would be true of Joe Biden. Look, he is just a vessel. I know we've said this before on this podcast. It's quite sad what has happened mentally to Joe Biden over the last several years, and certainly seems to have accelerated over the last several months. But he is now, and this was suspected before, but it is definite now. A Joe Biden presidency, he would just be an empty vessel in which the left would pour all of their agendas into and make happen. In fact, their plan now is to basically keep Joe Biden hidden away, and then fill that Trojan candidate with all of their ideas, and then hopefully keep the House and then take the Senate. And then they get 2 years, like Trump did, to institute all of their agenda. But this would be so radical. This is very concerning. It should be concerning to anybody who opposes the Green New Deal, who opposes socialism, who likes freedom, and who likes keeping more of their own money in their pocket thanks to the Trump tax cuts, because it's going to be the most. If you thought the Obama administration was radical, wait till you see this, because what Obama wanted was an extension of his 8-year in office through Hillary Clinton. They didn't get that. And now they've had 4 years of Trump derangement syndrome, and they're crazy. And so it's going to be turned up to 11 if Joe Biden is elected president. All this radical leftist stuff that's going to come through, even more so than under Obama.
Yeah, Justin, do you have that quote, that statement that Biden released?
I'll track it down. It'll only take me a minute to find it.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty good, but it completely supports what Jim is just talking about there. The actual wording of it is fantastic. So Justin finds that.
It's a full quote. This is from a written statement. So this is not an off-the-cuff thing. He says, from healthcare to reforming our justice system to rebuilding a more inclusive and fair economy, the work of the task forces will be essential to identifying ways to build on our progress. Now, I want you to think through all of the words here. Build on our progress and not simply turn the clock back to a time before Donald Trump, which remember, that's Obama, but to transform our country.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's code, very clear code to the far left that I'm going to help you guys get the socialist revolution that you guys want. I'm just going to do it in a little bit different way. I'm not going to do it quite the same way that you guys would do it, but we're not just going to go back to Obama. We're going to build on Obama. It's going to be better than Obama. And in that world, in that universe, better than Obama means more socialistic than Obama. And Obama was essentially a socialist. So this is very problematic. And I'll add to what Jim said. I agree with everything that Jim said. And in addition to that, I know you should celebrate. Good moment for you. And in addition,
big day.
Yeah. And in addition to that, I would add that there is no way, 0% chance that Joe Biden would bring in all of these people only because, remember, they're mad at him. This is the whole point. The left doesn't like Joe Biden. He's trying to win them over. Why then would you bring all these people into this committee that's supposedly going to help reshape his platform, be on his transition team, help choose cabinet members, all that stuff, only to say to them, screw you, I don't care what you have to say. Now think about that. All that's going to do is make them more angry. Yeah. It's going to make them angrier, right? So now you go to AOC, who's on the co-chair of the climate change committee. She says, we need a Green New Deal or else we're all going to die in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or whatever she says this week. And you say to her, you know what? I can't do that. Sorry. Too bad. So then what's she going to do? She's going to turn around and go on, Instagram with her glass of wine, and she's going to lament about how she got totally screwed over and how the left can't trust Joe Biden and how no one should vote for him. And then he's screwed. So what he's done here is he's forced himself into moving to the left of wherever he is right now. He may not have to go full socialist left, but he has to move to the left somewhat to appease these people. Otherwise, it's going to look like he's giving them all the finger. And so he has put himself, and I guarantee that this was a deal that was crafted before Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race. That he went to Bernie and he said, Bernie, I will give you this if you agree to drop out right now and help me just solidify this. And we don't have a big, long, drawn out debate. And Bernie probably went back because it probably wasn't this agreement. Bernie probably went back and said, I want to hand choose all of these people. I want half of the picks, and I want us to be able to completely recraft your entire agenda. And I bet you anything that he agreed to that right on the spot, just to settle it once and for all. And now here we are. Right. And this is so incredibly stupid politically, but I guarantee that this is exactly what happened.
Yeah, you know what? Because we were kind of surprised that Bernie endorsed Biden like a week after he dropped out. Like it was real quick. So yeah,
I wasn't surprised.
Well, yeah, it was just really quick. So I think that the idea that that's evidence that there was some type of deal made, for sure. Isaac, question for you. So it seems like he's doing this to kind of placate the more socialist side of the party that's upset that their candidate, Bernie Sanders, isn't the candidate. Okay. But the moderate side of the Democratic Party that did elect Joe Biden, they did it because they didn't want crazy Bernie Sanders and all of his socialist policies. So on one hand, it's like he's doing this to kind of get some type of party unity. But you could also see that, like, maybe he's making both sides angry. So do you think that this is going to do good for him politically or bad for him?
I think it'll be bad for him in terms of trying to win back. I was never a fib, okay? Those are fighting words. I think it'll be hard for him to win back some of those voters who decided to switch from, the people that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. A lot of those people are blue collar folks in, the Midwest, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I don't think that this makes it any easier for those people to switch back over. Like, I just think that it makes it harder to pry those people back. I think that there's, a good amount of people who voted for Biden just because they didn't want Bernie because they thought he was too crazy. And I don't think that they're going to care that he's bringing, that Biden is bringing in AOC and these people to do policy, because I just don't think that they're going to be looking at this closely enough to actually think, oh, wow, that might be bad. So I don't know. The thing for me is I don't think this is going to be convincing enough for people on the progressive wing of the party, especially with, some of the Me Too stuff coming up with Biden, that it's going to be hard for those folks to, even if they bring in like AOC, who is their poster child, I think it's going to be tough for them to maybe sit down and stomach it unless, the VP candidate is somebody that just like blows their socks off.
I think those are good points. I have a question for Isaac. Isaac, so Minnesota is a really interesting state to me. Actually, Minnesota, Wisconsin, is both of those states, very interesting states in terms of electoral politics, okay? Presidential politics historically in those states, they tend to lean toward the Democratic candidate. Trump was obviously a big game changer in 2016. Wisconsin voted for Trump. Minnesota, most people don't realize this, almost voted for Trump. Yep. And Gary Johnson got like 4 or 5 percentage points in that state. And you could argue that if Gary Johnson had not been in the race, Trump may have won. So my question is, in order for the Democrat to win in 2020, and I don't know why they don't understand this, because it's really simple. Just look at an electoral college map. In order for them to win, if Trump wins Florida, the only way a Democrat can win is if they win at least 2 out of 3 of the upper Midwest states, meaning Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then obviously Pennsylvania is not upper Midwest, but Pennsylvania too. You got to win 2 out of 3 of those, or 4 out of those states. So how the heck is that going to happen? Number one, do you think that's going to happen? And number two, why aren't Democrats trying harder to appeal to those people, since those are the people they absolutely have to have in order to win?
When's the last time they made sense? Like, I guess that's my like super cynical answer. But no, I think like it depends on who the running mate is, right? They're talking maybe Klobuchar, they're talking maybe Kamala Harris, they're talking maybe that woman from Michigan, Governor Whitmer. So if they decide to pick one of those people, Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin is also being talked about too. So, I mean, a lot of this is just all up in the air because of coronavirus, and nobody knows what this election is going to look like or what issue is going to be important. And that's always true, but this is extra true in this scenario.
Do you think Amy Klobuchar or someone like that, because we all know you love Amy Klobuchar, do you think that Amy Klobuchar or someone like that is going to be able to sway voters, say in Wisconsin or Michigan or something like that? Like, let's say Amy Klobuchar, she's the most visible Midwestern, person in the Democratic Party right now, I would say. So would she be the one, would she win over any voters?
I think that Klobuchar would keep Trump from winning Minnesota. So that would be like a defensive play. I don't think that she would have enough pull in Michigan or Wisconsin. I don't, that's just the feeling that I get. Basically, I think that if he picks any of these, potential VP candidates that have been rumored, they can probably pull off enough of a vote to help them win the state that they're at. So, or that they're from. Except for maybe Whitmer. I have no idea how, like, she's definitely imposed the most draconian stay-at-home orders out of all of this. So I think she's a total wild card. Like, I think that she's like so polarizing right now that she can't really be the VP. And I think one of the reasons she enacted all of these super strict orders was so she could be. Like that's just the way this stuff works. It just changes so quickly from day to day.
So,
and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard.
Oh man, was that Isaac making? Was that?
No, it's hard to tell because she's so good at that.
Man.
So I know that I'm not, the host. Donald's made that very clear to all of us. But what I would like to say is, I would like us to mark the tape right now, and I would like all of us to say whether Trump wins or loses right now.
Landslide.
Because I think I'm at a point right now where I think there is almost no chance he loses.
Yeah, 40 states.
Because he continues to move further to the left in a race that he has to be a centrist in, and it just is making Biden, and it just makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I think with this move here, Although I agree with Isaac, a lot of people won't necessarily know it unless Republicans make a big deal out of it, which they might. I don't see how he's done a single thing to convince a Midwestern blue-collar, Reagan-type Democrat to switch their vote from Trump to Joe Biden. I don't see a single thing. So I say no chance.
So here's kind of another way, like the similar question that I had to Isaac, but I'll pitch it to Jim in this way. Like, will Biden have Bernie Sanders like campaign for him in the lead up of this?
No, because they're too at risk from COVID-19. I mean, you really want that guy out there?
That's a good point.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think this is really going to be a weird campaign. I mean, we may have virtual debates instead of actual debates, or actually, I think they'll probably do the debates and they will be like 20 feet apart on the stage. We'll have all these weird camera angles, and we probably only will get one debate, maybe two.
What if they're all wearing space suits?
Yeah, that'd be funny. Actually, they're all in hazmat suits.
What a shame. The debate that I want to see the most is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And if we don't get that, that'll be the worst victim of COVID-19.
We're definitely going to get one. But I agree with Justin that there isn't a single thing that Joe Biden has done. In fact, he's gone in the other direction, that a blue collar voter would switch from Trump to Biden. I mean, this is not exactly, a state secret, but that's what the difference was in 2016 versus, the Obama coalition split and broke up, and a lot of blue collar traditional Democrat voters that they've had in their pockets for decades. These are guys in unions. These are guys who work with their hands. As the cliche goes, these are people who shower after work, not before work. In fact, and Joe Biden's going the other direction. I mean, he was trying to back off, Justin. You remember he was trying to back off that idea that fracking will be banned everywhere and we're going to take all these energy jobs away. He said it, then he backed up again. And now he has AOC leading it, who thinks all of this stuff, it needs to be banned immediately tomorrow, and magically we'll just go to a green economy, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast in the past, especially with the Michael Moore movie. So he's actually, as you said, he's becoming even more leftist. And this is a sign of actually profound weakness in his campaign, because, you got to be moving to the center. And in fact, his policies, this actually makes all of the policy stuff that he had on his website completely moot, because that stuff was kind of centrist. It was designed to appeal to the general population and to people who don't pay attention to politics all the time. And now all of that has been cast aside, and into it has been poured a radical leftist agenda with all the people that are running these committees for him. And that's because he knows, and Bernie probably told him, that you need to keep the leftist coalition together, or we're not going to be there at all. So he's had to take, he's had to take big steps back just to keep the leftist coalition together. This is a disaster for him. There's no way that he wins, that he takes away these old Trump voters, because there's no reason at all for them, zero, to go over to Joe Biden now.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of interesting. Again, with the Stopping Socialism Project, we did the little celebration after Bernie dropped out, and it's just like, 3 weeks later, a month later, it's just like, nope, all of his terrible ideas are now being exhumed from the ground and pumped into the Joe Biden campaign. So, expect us to have a lot of content coming out about all of Bernie Sanders, now Biden's terrible ideas, terrible socialistic ideas. I don't think everyone answered that question, though. Justin, you said you think Trump wins. I said landslide. Isaac?
I think it's anybody's ball game. And
50-50 shot.
Yeah. Honestly, the margins were just so thin in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan that, turnout could be different, and that could totally change everything. So I don't think anything's for sure.
Jim Lakely.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many unknown factors. I mean, we're in completely unplowed ground here with COVID-19. I mean, but I think it's going to be a landslide to a certain degree. I think he's going to expand. He's going to win Pennsylvania. He's going to expand his margin of victory there from last time. He's going to win Michigan. Thank you, Governor Whitmer. Done a great job. He's going to expand his margin of victory over there too. But I think, we just had a special election in California for actually 2 House seats, one in rural Wisconsin, the northwestern corner of the state of Wisconsin, and then one California 25th district north of Los Angeles. Includes Simi Valley and some conservative areas, but then a large swath into the desert north of Los Angeles. And that's the one that Katie Hill held, and she had to resign her seat because of sexual harassment, let's call it that, and abusing her staff. Really, it's abuse if you have sexual relationships with your staff. And so she had to resign. So they had a special election, and the leftist media and 538, everybody respects 538, and the Atlantic and other magazines like that were already writing stories. In fact, before the election, they wrote stories. What is this election going to say? Is this going to be another blue wave coming based on these two races? Well, a political unknown, a Navy veteran named Mike Garcia, won that 25th House district in California, and he won it by like 12 or 13 points. It was a huge victory, and this was with mail-in balloting for the most part in California, which was very interesting because mail-in balloting is very rife for fraud, and apparently there wasn't enough fraud to swing it. So he won that. So if that's a bellwether, that looks really good for Trump right now, because that's what the voters are doing right now. They're evaluating. This is California, where they've been in lockdown thanks to Governor Gavin Newsom. So it looks like lockdown politics is not a winner right now. At least it certainly reflected that in California, and the same up in Wisconsin. And so I think these lockdown states, these blue lockdown states that were kind of purple in the 2016 election, your Michigans, your Pennsylvanians, those are going to go Trump, because I think the voters are already starting to show that in that special election on Tuesday.
And we will keep an eye on all this as elections come upon. Gentlemen, we do have a little bit of time, but I don't really want to get into the other topics that we kind of sidelined to talk about all this Biden and Bernie stuff.
Me and Justin could do more yelling at each other. We still have about 9 minutes left. We can fill that up.
Let's just give the listeners a break. Let's call it a day. Let's say thank you for sticking with us through all the insanity.
Yeah. I won't
Justin, where can the fine people find you?
I won't leave again. No, wait, we got time. I'm still looking for TV shows to watch, guys. I finished whatever I was watching, and now I got nothing. Isaac, you still watching that gold mining show? It's like...
No, we got a little tired of that. It's kind of the same show over and over again. So we've been watching Waco.
I want to check that out.
That's been fine. We watched Westworld, and hey, Westworld and HBO, guess what? Just confusing people isn't a plot device.
Is that season 3 you're referring to, or 2?
Both. I mean, season 3 was less incoherent, but it was just the whole reason to keep watching is I don't know what's going on. And it's they've cut it to where it's interesting, but it's just, they're just playing with you. They're playing you, dog.
They're playing you, dog. Anyone else? I mean, I got 4 more months till Mandalorian comes out, season 2. So can't wait.
Yeah. Let's just talk about Baby Yoda for the rest of it.
Yeah. Isaac, find a good Baby Yoda meme.
Well, we got to start watching The Mandalorian again in lead up to season 2, don't we? You have to put it on a schedule like we did with Game of Thrones.
It's only 8 short episodes, so it's
true.
We could do that in a week.
My wife and I have been watching the show called Dead to Me, which is a kind of a dark comedy with starring Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini as two friends. And the first season actually, I think this is a great example of modern TV right now. And Isaac just said it with Westworld. Westworld season 1 was fantastic. Westworld season 2 was a complete confusing mess. Westworld season 3 is a little better, still confusing, and not really as interesting as season 1. And this show, Dead to Me, first season was wow, this is really fresh and original. This is really interesting. And then you watch season 2, and I was going to give up after the 4th episode. They're only 30 minutes. I thought, I'll give it another episode. All right, that wasn't as bad as I thought. I'll give it another one. So now actually there's only 10 episodes, so I'm going to get to the end. But it seems really hard these days for the creative minds of Hollywood to continue past one good season of something. I mean, it was repetitive. It was actually annoying, and you could see the so-called jokes and plot changes coming a mile away. It's what is it with Hollywood these days? They might be able to produce a good 10, 15, 12 episode string, but they can't. They seem to really have a hard time following it up. Breaking Bad got better as it went along. A lot of shows, only 10 years ago got better as they went along, and it's hard to find something that can last past 1 or 2 seasons these days.
On Hulu, What We Do in the Shadows. That is Isaac. Have you watched that? What We Do in the Shadows? Oh, it's right up your alley, Sarah. You were a fan of Flight of the Conchords, right?
Yeah.
Check out What We Do in the Shadows. It's a hilarious show. It's a kind of a really dry comedy about vampires. It's very funny. I guess I guess Justin wasn't interested enough in this conversation. He's gone. So let's just wrap it up. How about that? Audience, thank you for tuning in for this episode of In the Tank podcast. If you like our show, please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes. We greatly appreciate it. You can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, pretty much everything nowadays. If you'd like, you can follow us on Twitter at In the Tank Pod. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, feel free to email us at inthethankpodcast@gmail.com. In fact, we got a pretty decent one. Email that I responded to, and then Justin and I did a separate video on it that will be released soon on our Stopping Socialism channel, so check that out.
Will that be in the iTunes thing too? You should release it as a special podcast on the iTunes.
Yeah, we could do that. You could find it. Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
At Jay Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst for the Heartland Institute, also heartland.org. And hey, let's go. #end the lockdown.
Okay. Isaac Orr, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at FibStayHome on Twitter and Facebook.
If that's not a real account, you should make it. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.
Please clap.